Travel and Things, in association with Rugged Wear, Real People, Real Clothing, Real Solutions, presents In Conversation With. I'm your host, David Batsoffen, and my guest today was, or still is, a photographer on Big Cat Diary. That's Angie Scott. Angie, good day. Welcome to you.
Hi, David. Lovely to be here. Lovely to speak to you. Thank you.
It's only a pleasure. This has been years in the making. You're probably unaware of how long this has taken for you and I to actually sit down and chat together, because I know that this is not your forte. You normally leave this to Johnathan, but I think he's just tossed you in at the deep end.
No, he has indeed. I mean, I'm very lucky because Johnathan is such an eloquent speaker that he speaks for both of us. I mean, we work so closely together. It seems completely redundant to ever talk to me because I love what I do, which is the visual word, and I'm a listener by nature, not a talker.
Okay.
So I'm not a very good person to talk to, but I'm delighted to be here as you've requested that I am. And
Thank you.
Do my best and see if you can
All right.
the information that you're
Get the
looking
information out of you, so to speak. So let's go back. Let's go back to Angie in high school. Angie, last year of high school, is this what you wanted to do then? Or has your career path not been linear to lead you to where you are today?
Oh gosh, it hasn't been linear at all. I had a wonderful childhood. I mean, I was born in Africa. I grew up in Africa. It was a time where it was a very different world that we know it today. I was born in Alexandria, and then the Suez Crisis happened, and we were moved out of Alexandria, and my father went down to Tanzania. And, we lived on a beach, and my parents were is it the era that the parents sort of did their thing with that age group, and the children were left to run free and wild, as you say. We had no television, no radio, nothing like that. So you couldn't wait to get up in the morning and then we'd be out. So I grew up, loving the nature, boats and horses and Serengeti, and what more could you ask for? I had an older brother by a couple of years, and we were incredibly close. So I had his protection, and we just had an extraordinary childhood. But it didn't follow in like Johnathan's, going to school and then university and things like that. Mine was much more linear, as you say. I loved so many things. I thought at one point I would become a ballet dancer, for instance. I loved all sport, but I also loved reading and learning. Photography, though, came into my life when I was about 8 or 9, when my father gave me a little tiny box brownie.
As most of us started with, my box brownie and my little Kodak Instamatic are behind me on a shelf. I look at them every day.
Right. And it was a wonderful time because I wasn't terribly sociable, or I was so contented in my world with my brother and what we had available to us. I think, and also my family were very artistic. They were very sort of bohemian. They loved, my mother was a painter, my grandfather was a painter, and they loved books, reading, painting, art, things like that. It was quite a natural thing for me to love to observe. I was a quiet child, and I loved just sitting and looking at things and observing nature. But in those days you only had 12 little
exposures.
Yeah, and I only had a little pocket money every week to be able to buy a film. Actually, I think it was every month. I had to save up. So each shot had to be really thought about. I had to go and think. What was it that I really wanted to show my parents that I'd seen? What was it that I wanted to capture? that was sort of the beginning of it. And then, you know, I saved up for a darkroom, which I love to do. And that was my quiet place. I could go and play. And so, no, that, I mean, at high school, that was very much part of my life. You know, I love to paint, I love to draw, I love to take photographs, but I never thought that it would be a career path. You know, my father was quite strict in the sense of you need to have a career. And of course, I disappointed him madly because I went off and got married very, you know, I wanted to come back to Africa. At that point, Tanzania, my father's business had been Africanized, and I was desperate to return back. So, yes, and from then on, it was literally survival mechanism, what I could do to keep
the rent money coming in, type of thing.
Absolutely.
Just to go back to your comment about framing or making certain that what you wanted to show your parents was not a wasted frame because it was expensive. Do you believe that those of us who started out with film cameras and then migrated to digital have an advantage? Because I did exactly the same thing. Every picture you thought about, because there was no editing in those days. Yes, you could crop it in a dark room and maybe do a bit of contrast, but there wasn't the manipulation that you could do nowadays. And you couldn't add things in. It took far too long. I wasn't David Hamilton by any manner of means, or Sam Shepard, or one of those that spent hours in the darkroom manipulating images. So do you believe that the older school have a bit of a leg up on the modern photographers who can shoot 40,000 images and destroy 39,999 of them, and then save one which they manipulate beyond belief, type of thing?
I wouldn't put it like that, David. I wouldn't use the word advantage. I just think it's a completely different art form. The photography of today is not how we thought of photography when we grew up. I think, you know, I mean, and I still think in that same way. So to me, the image is not about me. It's about what I'm taking a photograph about. You remember, you know, I'm sure, studying Ansel Adams' book, Cartier-Bresson, people like that, Salgado. It was never about them. In fact, they were, I remember Cartier-Bresson saying something about, I'm the invisible man, or, you know, he never wanted the publicity because it was about his work. It was what he, and I feel very strongly about, not strongly, I just think it's a much more wonderful art form if you're thinking about the leopard or the lion and you are really invisible. You're trying to show the beauty of nature. You're trying to capture that essence of that place or animal or wildlife, to be able to share it with your audience and hopefully get the spark that you're looking for. Like when you said you loved our latest books, I mean, that makes it worthwhile. That's what you're looking for.
Well, this is the cover of this is the cover of your first of two, Sacred Nature, Life's Eternal Dance. And I, in fact, comes with a free trailer. I have my copy next to me. It is singularly, well, it isn't singular anymore because now there are two of them. It was singularly the best book put out by HPH Publishing that I had ever come across. The layout, the photographs are absolutely exquisite. And if I remember correctly, this was almost a family project, because your son was involved, son and daughter-in-law, if I'm not mistaken, were involved in this.
The book started because mainly Johnathan is a storyteller. And so most of our books were determined by him wanting to tell a story about the leopards or the lions or whatever it was. And I love supporting his work through imagery. But I'd always really wanted, often those kind of books never show the photography at their best. And I had said, I would really love us to do a really beautiful book that the imagery tells a story. And I couldn't find a designer that I liked. And so my son was home for Christmas, and I was talking it through with him and hoping and praying that he would say, okay, Mum, okay, I'll do it. And he said, well, I tell you what, Mum, he said, I will do it if I can choose all the images. You never, ever say anything about the design. You just give me full control. And I said, absolutely. And really, this is his book, because he just took the images and he worked day and night. And after 3 weeks of being with us, he just produced it on his last day and said, there you go.
Wow.
And he did the same for the second one. I mean, he grew up in the back of the car. So he knows Johnathan and I so well. And actually, he's probably a better photographer than either of us put together, to tell you the truth.
Angie, once he presented this book to you, and we'll get onto the second one in a moment or two, and you looked through it, was there a moment when you said, oh, if only you'd used that particular image rather than this? Or did you just bite your tongue and you went, no, thank you so very much. I can hand it over to a publisher now. We're really happy with it.
David, I didn't ever have to bite my tongue. I mean, with David, he actually runs our business.
Right.
So I would say that we're like this in the sense of what we see and believe and our ethos. So I know I was thrilled with everything he had chosen. And I never even thought would that be better than this? It just was very organic, actually, and was a very joyful time.
The cover of this book is so special. 5 years ago, my wife and I went to India, and on our first safari, we found a tiger, a female called Baras, whom we saw every drive for 5 days. She became very special. She's a tattoo on my, I've just recently done a tattoo of her. And I don't know about you, but tigers to me are just the apex predators. And I remember looking at her on the first day that I saw, and I sort of did the whole, it's a tiger. And then I did almost a double take, and I went, it's a tiger. I'm in India looking at a tiger in the wild. I'm one of the luckiest people on the planet. And she's right in front of me. And then we saw her every day. It was an amazing week that we spent with her. It really and truly was. And your cover evokes that sort of memory for me.
Well, thank you, David. I'm really glad about that. And I do agree with you. I mean, I am by nature slightly, if you'd like, obsessed, but I hate using that word. I just love lions. I could spend all day, every day, just observing and being with the lion pride. But I do agree with you. The first time I saw a tiger, I remember walking out in front of our Jeep, and I couldn't even pick up the camera. I was just so mesmerized and shocked by its presence and beauty. And yes, you just wanted to be so present to witness this beauty. And yes, I still do feel that about the tiger. They're very different to lions, although they're the same. But you know what I mean?
The lion prides. Sorry, I spoke over you. You were saying?
No, I was just saying they're magnificent.
They truly are. And I mean, most of their habitat, specifically in India, is being encroached. And I do hope that the government there is going to take steps to make sure that both the populace and the animals are looked after properly. Let's come back to where you and Johnathan find yourselves now and the work that you're currently doing. Is there a typical day in the life of Angie and Johnathan Scott, either jointly or singularly? Or do you wake up in the morning and you go, let's just hop in the Jeep and go look at lions or something?
No, I mean, we're very, very lucky, David. We believe strongly to keep the momentum going in what we believe that we can do for wild places. And so we have 101 projects going with David, my son, and daughter-in-law Tori. We felt quite strongly that if we're, I think it's a wonderful thing when people concentrate on species and try and put money into whatever it is for that singular species. But I think we long since believed that the species will take care of themselves if we give them somewhere to live. So it's all about the place. It's all about saving environments. And I think because it is such a big problem, especially in Africa, but across the world, everything comes from education. And if we can't educate the next generation to actually begin to conceptualize and understand why, you can't just go into a community and say, you have to protect. Mm-hmm. There has to be a reason that they understand and how they conceptualize how they can do that for their piece of land or for their area and with their people. And so our big thing now is education. And so we've started on this rather unusual course, I think, for us, but it's really run by David and Tori, thank goodness, because Johnathan and I technically would not be able to do it. But we're doing a whole range of podcasts, we're doing a whole load of ebooks, we're doing a whole load of tutorials, and they will run through photography and how to be a conscientious and maybe better photographer, but from a different angle. So not about the me photographer and about the selfies. It's about going out there and thinking, how can I make this useful in a way, or what is my project? Why am I taking this photograph? So it'll come from a slightly different perception, but also hopefully sharing how we take photographs. But then we'll also have a whole thing on conservation, environment, the problems that we face, and hopefully bringing on wonderful people to discuss issues with. And we're doing the same for, our tutorials and things like that. So hopefully being able to involve some filmmakers to come in and show, because I think visually, our visual sense is actually the most impactful.
Yeah, it seems to be. Yeah.
So you can write and write and write, and people will skim the words, but it won't sink into the sort of heart chakra. Yeah. And that's where you want to get people. You want people to really kind of see visually what's happening, and then explain the sort of scientific problems.
Are your ebooks and your podcasts available already? Can people find them online?
I think today or tomorrow, 2 of the ebooks are coming. Our first 2 ebooks will be online,
right?
And then from then on, they'll start rolling over. And at the moment, the podcasts, yes, I think we've got 2 up, and there's a series of 10 or 12, really about, first of all, it'll be about our story and our beliefs, and then we'll have a whole series that David and Victoria are curating
for you. Mom and Dad will just go out or sit in
we just do what we're told.
You just do what you're told.
We
Go
just do
north,
what we want.
parents. Yeah.
Yeah. No, it's completely like that.
Yeah.
But luckily, I often say to Johnathan, at our age, we're so blessed because
Mm.
a lot of people just kind of fade away at this age.
Yeah.
But we've got our youngsters saying, "Come on, Dad, you can do this. This
I
is."
want to sit
And
in front of the TV. No, you don't. Pick up a camera,
oh,
drive,
no,
get
you
out on
can't.
the Mara.
No. And
Okay.
of course, we have a lot of conservation work. And so
Yeah.
our days are very, yes, there are many different things. And yes,
Mm.
we still go down to the Mara, and I have to keep our photography because that's what tells the story.
Yeah.
We can't do it without being very present
Mm.
to the issues at hand.
Do you look back over the photographs that you've done over the years? And I don't know, Angie, if if you go back to the same places, but have you seen the difference from when you started
Oh,
shooting to where you
oh,
are now?
you have no idea. I mean, I think growing up in Tanzania, and I remember I have actual real memories
Right.
of Serengeti. There used to be a little wooden shack up there. That was the sort of first hotel.
Mm.
And I remember there, my brother and I were put in one little shack, and my parents were somewhere else. And we would sit at night, with our hands over the little windowsill, watching the buffalo come past. And I remember Serengeti in those days. And I remember we'd take these long trips, safaris up to Uganda, where my father had business. It was all dirt roads in those days, wild country, wonderful
Mm.
country. And we would also drive down to Durban every couple of years to catch a boat, a ship. But so we did a lot of traveling in those days. And the difference between, I know that's going back a long time, but even from when Johnathan and I started together, he's been working the Mara 47 years, I think, and I joined him 34 years ago, something like that. Yes, huge differences, huge. But it would be rather depressing to talk about them.
I know. I don't want to, and I don't want to, also don't want to. Well, I suppose saying I don't want to, and then touching on the subject is the influx of tourism in that area, where tourists have no idea, seemingly much like Kruger, where they come up to a sighting and they want to get out of the vehicles to be with the animals, and then they wonder why they get bitten or eaten or trampled on, and they want the animal dispatched. And you go, no, the rangers carry rifles to shoot tourists like you, not the animals.
That would be lovely. No,
Human
yeah.
stupidity. I think that's what the Darwin Award is for, and should be given out on a far more regular basis than it currently is, so that we can rid our planet of stupidity like that. I've
think
never understood why they do it.
no, but to me it is pure ignorance, because if you get the same tourists and you sit with them, they are normally, not always, obviously, but a lot of them are very mortified, and they say, gosh, we never knew. And I think that's why Johnathan and I are taking the path that we are about education, because if you could educate the people, so they would say to their driver, we've actually just had an incident yesterday, and this new person, tourist, actually rang us because we were helping her in some other capacity. And she said, I told my driver to drive away. I mean, she was so upset because she'd been listening to the conversations that we've been having. And I think it's just about a new way of thinking about wild places, more respect for the wild creatures that we're so privileged to see. And if people don't make that, instead of the cars with the champagne bottles and thinking that the animals are there for their entertainment. I mean, we have pictures that still to this day shock me, where, you've got wildebeest crossing a river with crocodiles and hippos. This to them is life or death.
Correct.
And you've got people on the bank stopping the hippo trails where they come out, facing backwards, taking a selfie, laughing with a glass of wine in their hands. And I'm thinking, and behind them, wildebeest are breaking their legs, you know, little calves getting eaten by crocodiles. I'm thinking, where is this disconnect between us and the wild places that we say we so love? And it's that to connect.
Yeah. Do you not think it's, and I see, I was going to ask you, do you not think it's a thing of privilege? But Zoom tells me we have but a few minutes left. Our time flies when you're having fun. Pardon me, and excuse me for that. You know, at the end of the day, yourselves with Big Cat Diary, David Attenborough with his vast range of programs, I do hope that in the years to come, these will be seen as groundbreaking, and people will look back and go, if only we had listened to, rather than just gone ahead and done what we thought was right, even though we knew nothing. Angie, I'm going to have to leave it there. It's such a pity. I was loving every minute of our chat. So thank you so very much for taking time from what is a rather terrifying lack of water where you are currently. I hope that gets resolved. Please pass Johnathan my very best regards. And I look forward to having a chat with both of you, or maybe even your son and daughter-in-law in the not too distant future, about your podcasts, about your ebooks, and about your tutorials. So once again, thank you so much for being a guest on this In Conversation With, and I wish you and the family all the very, very best.
Thank you so much, David. Lovely to speak with you.